Hi guys, so in my continued bid to watch all the slasher films from the 80s, I came across this film. I've reached the point now where I'm checking lists to find the more obscure ones that I haven't watched. This one does that thing where it sets itself around a particular time of the year. So obviously we've had slasher films set around Christmas and Halloween and April Fools. This one does Graduation Day, which is a little bit thin in terms of an idea because anybody's graduation day is a very brief thing. When I think back to my own, it's literally just half an hour of turning up in a gown, picking up your scroll from somebody behind a podium, taking a bunch of pictures and going home. This all takes place in the morning or the middle of the afternoon. It's fairly quick. So you can't really set an entire slasher film around such a concept. And this film kind of realizes that. I don't think anybody dies at a graduation day ceremony in this film, even though we do see like a rehearsal for graduation day and then the actual ceremony, kind of. This is mainly a slasher film set in a high school. The graduation day thing is just the hook for the title. So this one kicks off really well, actually. We get an opening sequence set around an athletics track. There's some kind of race involving high school girls happening. You can tell it's an actual competition because everybody's getting really into it. There's lots of passion in this scene. There's some cheesy music playing on the opening credits while this is happening, and I just found myself smiling through the entire scene. You've got the coach by the side of the track with his stopwatch. Like, you've got the boyfriends of the runners on the bleachers, like, you know, cheering them on, and the runners themselves as they come into the final straight, like, and one of the girls, the one right at the front, looks just like that. She looks like she's about to collapse, and as she crosses the finishing line to win the race, she actually does collapse, apparently because she had some kind of blood clot, and for some reason, someone among the crowd blames the rest of the track team for this girl dying of a random blood clot, which is a very bad motive, really. And so once it gets to graduation day, this person starts to pick off the members of the track team one by one. And I won't tell you who turns out to be the killer in this film if you haven't seen it. This was directed by a guy called Herb Fried. Not heard of him, not seen any of his other 7 or 8 movies. And this film stars a bunch of people I've not really heard of, apart from one guy called Michael Pataki, who plays one of the teachers. And the only reason I recognised him is because he has a very small role at the beginning of Halloween 4. But that's how difficult it was for me to pick anybody out of this lineup of actors. When it comes to the lesser-known slashers, I kind of make an assumption in my head that they'll turn out to be garbage, but this one's actually pretty good, and I had an instinct that it would be just from that opening scene because of how much I enjoyed it. This film really captures the time period of the beginning of the 80s. It does really well for that. I felt a really big sense of nostalgia watching a lot of this film. Now, I wasn't a high school student in 1981, but I did start going to school in the 80s, so I wouldn't have been a million miles behind this particular cohort. And I just found myself going into this wistful, reflective frame of mind when I was watching a lot of this film, seeing the fashions and just watching the way people talk to each other in and around the school. It really does well with the dialogue, this film. There's nothing like really witty or clever in the things that people are saying. There's no great one-liners, and yet, nevertheless, a lot of the conversations feel very real. And there's a lot of this film that takes place before the main body of kills starts to happen. There's this whole ecosystem in the high school of crisscrossing relationships between students and teachers, and we get to spend a lot of time with a lot of different people before the main action, and a lot of the random chats that happen just feel very believable. You might, for example, get, I don't know, a boyfriend and a girlfriend sat on a bench, and they'll just be talking random crap because maybe they don't have a lot of life experience, and then eventually they'll run out of things to talk about and start necking. It just seems like something that would actually happen. And even with the teachers, we spend a lot of time with them during this movie, but you can really feel their underlying frustration about how their working lives can never be completely enjoyable because they'll never fully understand their students or make friends with them, partly because of resistance from the students, but also a little bit of resistance from the teachers as well. So, yeah, I got a real sense of nostalgia from watching this film that I didn't even get from watching this film's companion piece, Prom Night, which is arguably a more polished movie. But yeah, this film's got something even before you get to discussing the kills and the stuff that happens later on. There's a good final girl too. At least she's good for a while. So the main character is the sister of the dead track star, but she's not in high school herself. She's a lot older than her dead sister, it turns out. So she's actually a naval officer who's coming back into town to take the place of her dead sister at her graduation ceremony and maybe have a little poke around the school while she's at it. But I was really taken straight away with the actress who plays Anne. She's tall and striking and good looking, and it's cool that they've made her an older character because it would have been easy, I guess, to just make the sister somebody who is also at the high school, maybe a bookworm who wasn't at the track meeting because she's just not into sports, but now she wants to do the whole Velma thing and investigate what the hell happened. Having the sister be a naval officer in presumably her 30s, maybe, it just makes her a real mature presence in this film when surrounded by high school students. And wow, what an actress. I was really looking forward to checking her out on Wiki and finding out more about her. But I do have a couple of really big misgivings about the actress and the character. One of them is going to make me sound really stupid and shallow, and the other bit of criticism, I guess, is a bit more prim and proper for a serious movie review. But let's start with the really stupid thing. So I looked up this actress, and I was surprised that she doesn't actually have a wiki, which is an immediate sign that a person didn't go on to have a particularly great career. This woman was in a few things, but apparently not enough stuff to have a wiki. But another thing I noticed is her name. So she's called Patch McKenzie or something like that. I may have got the second name wrong, but I haven't got the first name wrong. Patch. I've never heard a woman be called Patch before. Is this common in America? It just seems like a dog's name for me. Like, here, Patch, here, girl. I'm just so disappointed that this incredible actress turned out to have a name like Patch. Like, bad enough you'd call a woman Patch, but it just makes it even worse when that woman is like a really good-looking woman who is an actress. It's just bizarre to me. And I was getting ready as well to make this one of my new favourite actresses from back in the day. But hey-ho. But in terms of the character, she starts off really strong and I'm liking her a lot. And then she just kind of disappears in the middle of this film for at least half an hour at one point as we focus on other characters. And then even later on in the film, when she turns up again, she's kind of just there in scenes and yeah, she takes part and stuff. And at the end, she's involved in the final confrontation with the killer, but she just stumbles into the final confrontation by accident rather than gets there by investigative skill or some kind of leap of logic that she's made. So it's a strange thing writing such a really strong character for her first 30, 40 minutes and then just getting bored of her and discarding her. Sadly, the kills let the film down a little bit. They clearly didn't have that competent a crew doing the action and the kills. There's something wrong with a lot of the deaths in this. So, for example, there's one moment where somebody gets skewered through the neck and there's a brief shot of like a fake head, but it looks so obvious. It's really awkward. There's another kill where, for some reason, the murderer has attached like a long poker to an American football and then thrown the American football, and it's just gone right through this guy. And I'm just thinking, you can't do that. That wouldn't work, I don't think. And there's another scene where a woman is staring face down against the killer, and instead of try and run left or right, she just stands there going, like I hate it when people just stay in the same spot and just accept death. It's really annoying. But for all that, there is one kill in the film which is worth the price of admission. I really liked it. So there's this one guy who is practicing his pole vaulting. If you don't know what that is, it's where you run down a track with like a large stick, then you plant it in the ground and flip yourself over like a high bar and land in a crash mat. It's part of the Olympics, I believe. I vaguely remember trying it at school. I wasn't very good at it. But when the guy in this film does it, he doesn't realise that the killer has left like a spike trap in the crash mat, so that there's lots of different spikes. And this guy just accidentally impales himself when he lands in this mat. And it looks great, and it was such a surprise when it happened. The only thing that's missing is a sound effect for when the body hits the spikes. But again, that's just an example of just how amateur this film is when it comes to its any kind of action, really. And another little thing that I noticed is that a lot of the kills happen outside of the school, maybe in the woods nearby or on the athletics track. There's a lot of high school sets in this. It's not like Halloween H2O, where all they've got is like the front gate and the boiler room and one other room, and it's like, director, where's the rest of the school? No, they had a lot to film in with this. It feels like we experience most of a high school geographically, and that they're really reluctant to have kills inside the school for some reason. I like Graduation Day musically, even though for a lot of it, there's not actually much music. So we have long stretches of this where the soundscape is just totally barren. There's just nothing happening. But I think that's what contributes towards the really realistic high school feels that I was talking about earlier. I think if you've got constant music playing, then sometimes it reminds you that you're watching a movie. But when the soundtrack does kick in this from time to time, it does so really effectively in a very varied way, actually. You've got the cheesy music at the beginning, and then there's this other scene much later on where this random high schooler just starts playing this acoustic to all these kids, and it's a really nice little moment, even though you could take it out and it wouldn't make any difference. It's got nothing to do with the story. I'm not sure I even recognise the character on the guitar. There's another scene where they bring in a band to play at the graduation ceremony, and that's really cool. I enjoyed listening to that little rock track, and I like it when horror movies, especially slasher movies, throw a band in there. It was very effective in The House on Sorority Row and The Howling 2. In fact, probably the band was the only good bit about Howling 2 that I can remember. There's a curious little subplot in the film about a pervy music teacher. Now, this is strange. This guy is clearly sleeping with his students, or at least one student that we can see, but near the end of the film, he started working on another girl. Unless it was just the same girl, and I'm getting confused. But whatever, this guy is doing things that he shouldn't. He's got a very weak groin, and he can't stop himself. In other words, he's a character who is absolutely ripe for a good violent kill that we can all cheer for. But it doesn't happen. This guy survives the movie, mainly because he's not on the track team. Therefore, he's immune. The killer is only going after people on the track team. So you've got this weird situation where a bunch of people are getting offed when they don't deserve it because they had nothing to do with the runner's blood clot, obviously. But you've got people in the school, at least one guy who probably would deserve to get killed, and yet he doesn't. So I'm not sure how I feel about this, because I do like to be surprised in movies. I don't just want the obvious things to happen. But I definitely think that attitudes towards this kind of behaviour from teachers was maybe different in the early 80s than it is now, because this film treats this behaviour like it's just a kind of like naughty thing. Oh, look at this guy, he's a bit naughty, he's having it off with his students. But yeah, certainly if this film was being remade, it'd be interesting to see what would happen with this subplot. Right, it's time to see if Graduation Day will graduate with honours when we go to the bag of terror. Here's the bag. So we've got 1, 2, 3, 3.5 Michael Myers carving knives. I guess if I had to translate that into a school grade, maybe a B+, I guess. I would have liked to have given this film even more than this, but I do think the kills are very amateurish and low budget, even for 1981. And the way that the main character falls off a cliff, not literally, after such a strong start is kind of disappointing. But I still really enjoyed this film more than I thought I would, and it's really enthused me in terms of continuing to check out these lesser known 80s slashers. So I think I'll definitely be back with more when it comes to this subgenre. Right, we'll leave it there for today. Thank you for joining me. I'm off to the graduation day post party now or whatever. So until next time, cheerio, bye-bye.